This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and today we're going to do a hot and fast brisket in the Masterbuilt charcoal vertical 40-inch smoker. That's a mouthful. Now, I have a lot of videos on this smoker particularly, and I really do like it. It's really versatile. My only two drawbacks are that the charcoal tray warps, and the other one is that the limited cook time. So because you can only run this for what it's filled for, you have a limited cook time depending on the temperature, usually around 8 hours max. But that makes it a really good option for a hot and fast type recipe. So we're gonna run this starting at 325, and then as we go, we might push it up to 350. We can't lower the temperature on this model. Once you set it, you can only go up. So first thing I'm going to mention to you is, I'll show you this picture, is that because it's been sitting for a while, I'm doing a little pre-smoke, and I'm just using the electric hot plate with a pan from the Big Chief smoker full of wood chips. Today's primary flavor of wood is going to be mesquite. So that pan in there, which is pre-seasoning the smoker, is mesquite, and I recommend that you do that with any smoker. Next, I took some wood chunks and I put it in the four corners and then a couple in the middle to fill the gaps in between, and I laid a light layer of charcoal on there and arranged it all in really nice. For the charcoal, I like to use the Kingsford flavored charcoal. The Kingsford charcoal has a mesquite brand with the wood chips are forced right into it, and I'll hold that up really quick, and I don't know if you can see that there, but that is wood chips that are part of the charcoal briquette. The only downside to this product is that it does burn pretty fast, which makes a smoker that already burns rather quickly burn even quicker. So when I poured the rest of the charcoal in there to fill up the tray, it pretty much filled up most of it for the 8-pound bag. And then I used a few other chunks, and I went ahead and put those chunks on the propane grill in the chimney starter. And I'm gonna go get that and bring that over here right now. We've got our chimney full of charcoal going really good here. And when I say full, you wanna keep it just below the little vent lines. And with this one, I don't like to overfill it even more so. About 12 briquettes is usually plenty. There's a little gap here for the haystack lighter, and I'm just gonna move a few of the charcoals out of the way so that way when I pour in these charcoals, they'll have a place to land. And then if I want to, I can use the tongs to throw that back in there. Let me grab a picture. So check out this picture here, and you can see that there's a nice little space there to pour these in. Now I'm waiting for the charcoals to all turn white. Now they're burning really good, and the ones in the bottom are definitely white, but it's just a little bit more. To re-explain what I've done here, I put 12 or more charcoal briquettes in the bottom of the chimney, and then I took it to the propane grill and I used the side burner to light it. Now, of course, you could take a piece of newspaper and spray it with a little bit of vegetable oil and put it underneath there and lay it on the ground like it's sitting right here at my feet right now, and it'll light right up. This is just fast and easy, and I like anything that makes my life a little easier. So now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna dump this in there slowly in an area where I don't have to worry about burning anything. And that's set up and burning, so it's ready to move to the next stage. So I'm gonna go ahead and load that in there, and I'll be right back. So take your oven mitts or your hot gloves and grab onto that thing, especially on the hot side, which is on the right, and then position it into the door all the way to the left, and it should just slide right in. Then we just turn the power on, select the temperature button, and I'm going to turn it to 300 to get going. Just wait a second and it'll turn on. For the fan and everything to work at full speed, the doors need to be closed because of the two safety latches right here. When you open the doors, the fan will kick down in speed. I'm going to leave these doors closed for a second, and I'll head in and I'll grab the brisket and we'll talk about that. So here is today's brisket, and I went ahead and trimmed it up. I'll show you a couple of pictures of what it looked like before I trimmed it, and then I basically just kind of trimmed it down. I don't want any really hard fat or any thick layers of fat, but I do want to keep a good amount of fat because it'll keep moisture in there, and that is important. I also don't want to break the main structure because when you're injecting it, if you get too deep on your cuts, a lot of the liquid will come out as you inject it. I trimmed a few pieces off of the flat so that way I can make a little bit of jerky that I can snack on during the day while I'm cooking. Now, it might be a little tougher than the regular jerky you would have, but because you sliced across the meat, it'll still be quite edible, and it should be delicious because brisket makes really good jerky and beef bacon. Now, always inject your meat first. Kind of set out a pattern and do an injection hole about every inch or a little less than every inch, and when you get to the really thick parts, you'll need to inject more. Then I come back when I'm all done and I inject a little bit more. So the injection, you see the picture here, is 1 cup of low sodium beef stock and a half a cup of your favorite barbecue sauce. I prefer a brand name one that's low sugar and low sodium for my injection, but I don't really want to go no sodium. I just want to keep it down to a minimum. Also, do not inject this ahead of time more than about 15-20 minutes because it'll start drawing the liquid out. Same thing goes for the dry rub. This is my standard dry rub. I just use a recycled container, but you can do anything that works good for you. I took a garlic container and use it to put in the mix. That's 3 parts pepper in the picture here, 2 parts granulated garlic, 1 part smoked paprika, and 1 part smoked salt. Now, you can smoke your own salt, and I have an article on that if you want to check that out. Then we mix this together in here. Now, the reason I like to use such a large container is because the different material will settle at different rates. So in a large container, you can mix it all really good right before you use it. The next thing I like to do is sprinkle it along the edges first. I want it on the edges and the ends, but I don't want it particularly heavy on the edges and the ends. Point out something I forgot to mention is that when I was done injecting it, I took some of the marinade and rubbed it all over the outside surface of the meat. That will act as a binder. Now that I've covered the edges, I'm just going to sprinkle across the top. Now I will cover both sides twice. So get the first side lightly, flip it over, come back again, inspect that, and oh man, it's not going to need a lot more. It looks really good. The reason I do both sides twice is because when you're flipping it around, sometimes you wipe off some of the dry rub, and we want to make sure it's well coated, especially on the thick areas of the point there. And then one more time back again, and yeah, this one looks good too. That just means that a lot of the juice stayed inside of the brisket instead of getting into the pan. Because if the pan is all soaking wet, then it'll pull some of your seasonings off. And so I used about 2/3 of what I mixed up today for a brisket. Now this has to heat up at a certain rate or else the safety will turn it off, and it looks like today it's gone right through that and worked out excellently. When I open it up, the safety turned off. Now, as part of my preparation, today I pulled out the water pan. I'm not a real big fan of ever using a water pan unless I'm just humidifying for a cleaning. But I like to put in a tinfoil tray down in the bottom to catch most of the drippings, and a grill mat. It helps keep the surface a little bit cleaner and easier to move this around. So here we go. And I know I should have gloves, but this is what it is today. And I'm just going to set it right here in the middle. And I want you to notice where I'm putting it. I like to put it on the second shelf down, and that's a really good consistent cooking space. And we'll get that closed. So I always put in the grill mat, and I always put in a foil sheet in any of my smokers for whatever preparation I'm doing. And the reason I do that is for easy cleanup. When we're done smoking and cooking everything, I can take and throw the tinfoil tray in the garbage. I can take and put the grill mat in the dishwasher and any grills if need be without a lot of scrubbing. The grill mats are really easy to just brush right off with a regular dishwasher brush. And then I'll run those through in a dishwasher cycle without any other dishes and just a little bit of soap. We are at 151 temperature right now. It has a long ways to go to get up there, but like I said, it has to get to a certain point to keep the safety from kicking off, and I think we've made it there. Now, one thing about this smoker is a little bit of smoke will leak around the edges, but that's not really an issue. As long as you're generating enough smoke and you're holding good heat, there's no reason to worry about a little smoke leaking. The bottom does have a seal, which forces all the heat up. Another thing to point out is there's a little deflector in there where the smoke comes out at the bottom of this compartment. And I'll try to pop a picture of that right up here. That deflector needs to be in the up position so that way the vents from the heating compartment are fully open, and then it'll allow 100% of the heat. If you're doing a low temperature smoke, then you flip that upside down and it'll slow the amount of airflow and smoke up into the upper chamber. Now, we're just gonna wait. When I get halfway through this cook, I will go ahead and use the thermal probe here to monitor it, but I wanna make sure that I'm seeing the same thing with my instant read thermometer as I'm seeing with this. So I will kind of gauge it and make sure that it reads the same. So we're gonna let this roll for about 3 hours before we talk again. That'll be a couple of seconds for you. It's been just under 3 hours right now, and I checked on this a second ago and we're looking really good. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out those little slices that I did. And I want to get it closed back up so that way the safety will kick back on as soon as possible to keep the airflow going good. Now these are the little slices. I took along the flat and I sliced some pieces and then a couple of the scraps from the trimming, and I just put a little bit of the injection marinade in a bowl and mixed it all really good, drained it off and put the dry rub on there. I have already tried one and they taste great. Some of these small pieces are going to be really crispy, almost burnt, which is what I just ate. But I'm going to come up here a little closer so you can get a good look at this. Now, of course, it's brisket, so it's not going to be the softest meat in the world. You'll have to give it some time if you want that on a low and slow process. But sliced brisket fat across the grain makes excellent jerky. So Let's give this one a try right here because it's pretty crispy. I'm gonna bring it up. You can see it's got a lot of smoke ring on there, and it's actually a little more tender than I thought it was going to be, but the edges are completely dried out, just like a regular piece of jerky. So I'm going to take this in the house and I'm going to eat it, and we're going to keep going here. In about an hour, I'm going to go ahead and insert the temperature probe so I can keep an eye on it. For right now, I know that the center is nowhere near where we want it. Something that I might have forgot to mention earlier in the video was the reason I set the temperature to 325, even though the target cooking temperature is 350, is because of thermal runaway. It's very common with charcoal smokers or with even offset smokers where you have a solid fuel like wood or charcoal, that your temperature will shoot past where your mark is. And we don't want to go above that if we can help it. So a few degrees, no big deal, but 30 degrees and then we're overcooking our meat. And a little bit of that can contribute to these crispy edges. But most of that is just hard cooking with charcoal, which is awesome because the flavor is amazing. So I'll see you in a couple of seconds. For me, it'll be a couple hours. So I just peeked my nose in there and boy, does it smell good. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna slice a little piece of that off. Normally you wouldn't do this, but just because we're doing the video. All right, then we're gonna go ahead and take a reading on the temperature. (168). Now we have the probe here. Then we'll go ahead and close that. So the probe is reading 158 and the instant read thermometer took 168. But they are in a little bit different positions, so I'm willing to say, oh, now the probe is saying 163. So maybe it still needs to level out a little bit before we get too much in a hurry here. And I'm gonna pull this back just a little bit. I got the probe in the door. And now I'm gonna check the firebox to see. Everything looks good. We're about 2/3 of the way done with the charcoal. Now I wanted to point out one more thing before I move on, is that when I loaded the charcoal, I put the center divider in, which you always need that when you do a low temperature cook, but when you do a high temperature cook, they recommend not using it. I prefer to use it. It helps the charcoal feed through and extends it just a little slower. However, it does reduce the amount of charcoal you can put in. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this piece that I just cut here. I can put it up in here so you can get a really good look at it. Nice smoke ring on the top there. On the bottom there's a lot of fat there, so you're not going to see a smoke ring much. And I'm just going to slice this. So normally you wouldn't do this, but because of the video, I'm doing it. We're at 165. I'm going to start with this piece here, right off the edge. Got a lot of nice crust on it. That's the piece with the smoke ring. That tastes great. It does have a long ways to go to break down though. So we're gonna go ahead and let it run. The crust is good, a little bit of moisture in the crust, but we're at the point to where the main part of the meat is in the stall. So we're gonna try to push through that and get it to start moving up in temperature. And at the higher temperatures like this, I've noticed I don't have as big of a stall as you do at the lower temperatures. But it's pushing that liquid out right now. And as soon as that liquid is gone, the stall will be over and it'll start moving up again. All right, so I'll see you in a couple more seconds for you, a couple more hours for me. We have reached temperature, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull that out. The smoker just turned off a couple of minutes ago. It just kind of ran out of charcoal there. And like I said, you barely have enough charcoal in here to complete this. So whatever you do, do not fill it short. Make sure you get it all the way to the top when you're trying to do this. So I brought out a sheet. I'm going to bring this up here and show it to you. Now, I don't like my brisket mushy. I like it pretty firm. So I try to pull right around 193 degrees. So this section over here is actually a little bit higher. So this is about 197, and the flat part is in the 192-degree range, which is really just a little under, but I'd rather be just a touch under and have it a little firmer. I'm going to cut off a little piece of this. On this side, you're supposed to cut at that angle, but I really just want to leave it in one piece. So I'm going to sample that. I'm going to bring this up to you and show it to you, and it is hot. I don't know if you can see the steam, but I can see it coming off here. And like I said, you're supposed to cut that direction on this. I'm going to set this down for a minute because it's warm. And then I'm going to go ahead and transfer the brisket to a piece of foil. This foil sitting right here. Ooh, hot, baby. One day I'll learn. Probably not today, though. If this piece of foil is not big enough, which it looks like it's not going to be, then when I get in the house, I'll go ahead and put some more on there. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it off both ends. Oh, it's close. That down there. I think that's going to work, actually. Push it down a little bit here. Fold it over there. So what I want to do is I want to wrap that in a towel and let it rest for about 30 minutes or more. And I'm actually going to be about an hour and a half away from dinner. So I'll probably stash that in a towel inside a box in the house. You could use a cooler, of course, which is what I recommend if you're doing an outdoor party. Now I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit, and then I'm just going to cut this into some chunks. The one thing about cooking at this temperature is that it does get a little crispier around the edges. I'll show you this. It's kind of hot to hold, so I'm going to do that. But I want to show you how it just comes right apart, and I guess it's better just to go like that. It's super soft. So around the edges, like I said, a little crusty, but that's just flavor. So I'm going to do a write-up on this just so that way people know exactly what I did. And we use this smoker here, but the basics transfer to any smoker that has a 350 degree temperature range. Start at 325, move it up to 350 so you don't have thermal runaway with a charcoal or a wood smoker. That's easy. With a pellet smoker, you don't really have to worry too much about thermal runaway, so you can just pretty much set it where you want it, get it going for a while, and then raise the temperature up to 350 and make sure that you're right around where you want. If you bump to 360, you'll be fine. You're looking at 8 hours, and the real secret to the fast and hot brisket is to make sure that you inject it. And I use 1.5 cups of liquid and always have a little bit left over on a 13-pound brisket. I like to use the same size all the time because after I trim it, it's just a little over 12 pounds and I get similar results most of the time. And that is a little bit smaller on the size range of brisket. So a lot of times you'll end up with a larger one. You want to trim it a little bit more. By all means do that, but save that meat for something else like chili. Chili brisket is awesome. So if you saw anything you like in the video, of course there'll be affiliate links below, and I do get compensated for those, so thank you. And also you'll find a couple of articles linked right in the description. First of all, the review for this smoker right here will be linked. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.